Okay, we're ready to start. Welcome back for the last session of today's program. And a real pleasure to introduce a dear friend and colleague, Akansha Rastogi. Akansha has been Senior Curator of Exhibitions and Programming at the Kiran Nadar Museum of Art, OKNMA, in New Delhi. She's been part of the core instituting team of that museum since 2011. Akansha's writing focuses on exhibition histories of modern and contemporary Indian art, as well as on questions of institutional memory. Her exhibitions, Hanger for the Passerby in 2017, Zones of Contact / Grazing in 2013, and Inhabiting the Museum from 2011 to 2015, have proposed and imagined museum space and archives in South Asia as an incremental site for undigested materials and histories, something I know that she's going to address today. Since 2019, Akansha has been leading a multi-year program at KNMA under the framework Young Artists of Our Times, within which she's curated 4 exhibitions and thought forms, including Very Small Feelings, co-curated with Diana Campbell and presented at the Dhaka Art Summit in 2023. Her most recent exhibition, The Elemental You, in 2024, presented the works of Simran Gill, Hajra Waheed, and Neha Choksi. So with that, take it away, Akansha.
Thank you, Priyanka and Pratik, for having me, and Ratan for this provocation to kind of reflect on one's practice and come up with a few keywords that kind of help. So I'm going to offer a few keywords for this, for some kind of collective thinking that we can do together today. In all earnestness, I did title my presentation. I rescued speed altogether, but I don't know what it means. These are the words of my 3-year-old toddler. and he said it while cycling, right after he learned how to do a full pedal, not half pedal, full pedal. And I can relate, like I know where each word is coming from, but I have no clue what he meant, or I don't understand what he meant by this stringing together, and maybe we can discover it together. Mm-hmm. So here it is, for whatever it may mean. So most of my exhibitions and manifestations of my curatorial work have unfolded as dialogues with the larger idea of art institutions as a form, and particularly, of course, in the Indian and South Asian context. And for the last 14 years, as most of you know and are familiar with my work, I've been working with Kiran Nadar Museum of Art, and we are at a very interesting moment of expansion, where we're opening a new building in 2027. And so this is an interesting period of growth, but also reflection and looking back. And so my frameworks, making frameworks of critical engagement within the museum context, and to be with the difficult and the difficulty in carrying the dialogues that one want to host, hold, and carry forward. So most of these projects have happened in the museum that I'm going to talk about, and they also kind of lay out one's commitment as part of the core instituting team of the museum. And with all of this also comes the responsibility and also the question, entwined question of who is the institution, and that I'm beginning to hold very closely. A who, not a what, and who not as in the founder or the director or the curator or the programmer as the institution, but the who that represents and constitutes stakeholdership in the ideas of the institution, outside as well as inside, and seeks particular kind of embedding into the institution. So, and then, this is the embedding that can also ask of the institution and kind of in that way build it forward. So, I am curatorially have always been interested in this becoming. And for me, how this becoming also activates minor movements, softer movements, and ripples, and building of empathy and acknowledgement of certain parts of the institution as a body that have never been felt. Sensing those parts and those movements is also something joyous, and I take note of them. And I'm interested in them, and where does the artist and the creative practitioner fit in these equations is, again, when one begins to answer in a reflective way, so then it is then these processes of stakeholderships, of ideas both outside and inside begin to emerge. And so thus, in this context, I offer these 3 keywords that kind of anchor my practice, and I hope in the 30 minutes I have, I'm able to kind of share the kind of propositional intensity with which they have emerged and they carry for, at least mean for me. And now when I look back also, this vocabulary or scaffolding, more than a curatorial methodology, they appear as more as a now, a self-devised curriculum for myself and for my museum, and as well as for my visitor, and also self-devised curriculum that kind of also indulges in making of that museum, making of the modern contemporary art museum, but and also as much as making from within. So it of course does not take the given as a given, and does of course ask questions, and most basic of questions, what it means, for instance, to be this modern contemporary art museum in South Asia, and then answering them again and again and again, and I choose to locate my practice within such gaps, nuances, and positionings, and of course a certain kind of scale, and I think a lot about scale in a I think interesting way, because which you'll see, at least that interests me, and be involved in capacity building, not just in terms of hiring or making of the institution, but also conceptually, building affordances and tolerance within. So thus I see my role as a keeper of a volatile and unstable terrain. So my methodologies, all these 14 years that I've been there, have mostly been tactical and incremental and biased, of course. We all are biased, but mine are biased towards materials and conversations that make art happen, and not just the art, but conversations that make things happen, make art happen, and where. So locating art and where is it happening also becomes part of that process. So the 3 phrases are grazing, indigestion or undigested materials and histories, and thus an incremental museum. And all of the 3 terms are also kind of related to metabolism, metabolic processes, coming from the body and thinking of institutional body or bodies, collective, and ideas, of course, of growth and different kinds of growth and transforming. But these are also highly practical, foldable, adaptable, and reproducible methods that have gently evolved and employed in exhibitions. And by grazing, I literally mean the way cows graze, freely and feeding lightly, chewing, fermenting, but also re-chewing what has already been eaten. So they bring it back, you regurgitate and bring it back for chewing again. So this conscious process of breaking down or metaphorically extending it as time for thinking and rumination and recall. So here, of course, the archive and the archived object become the key agent. The second framework is of the undigested materials and histories that are yet to be held properly or yet to be made space for. And of course, we all know indigestion is something that's a system either rejects or gives out. It's not easy, reflux happens, and then nausea and a burning sensation, fullness, etc. but undigested also carries the difficulty of digestive processes or suggestion that it can happen in multiple bodies. It doesn't have to have, it requires more mechanisms or processes for churning of the materials than the current system allows or affords or can take care of. And thus, with all of this, of course, I offer the imaginary of this incremental museum, and which I believe now that I've been slowly moving towards, and probably it's becoming clear, and I mean, that was the intention from the get-go. And the hope is that these accretions of these undigested materials and histories and layers lead to these movements that slowly transform the institution in terms of its impulses and and collective thinking that the curatorial can facilitate, read, and be with. So, and thus the incremental museum is also, of course, interested in the museum, in the becoming. So today I'm going to, speak through these three projects, zones of contact, propositions of the museum, which was co-curated in 2013 at the Noida branch of our museum, which we have just recently closed, and Hanger for the Passerby in 2017, and the Young Artist of our Times, that project that Ratan also spoke about. So in retrospect, they all do seem to be thinking, have been about collective thinking and form making and collectivity. So grazing first emerged in 2013 in the exhibition, in the zones of contact, and it was the museum's first curatorial collaboration, of a 2-year-old young museum with Diksha Nath and Vidya Shivdas, and it's quite interesting that how that coming together of 3 curators preempted a lot of work that all 3 of us have done in the last decade or so. So it was really special. The kind of provocations that have emerged in our individual work were all present in that exhibition, and of course it's titled after James Clifford's Zones of Contact, Museums as Contact Zones and Meeting Grounds. The proposition was really simple, with 15 artists and 3 commissioned projects. It was kind of stringing together practices of artists and projects who've been working with archives, and and artists who kind of offer interesting metaphors of museum making and thinking through their practice. And because of the lack of institutional infrastructure in this part of the world, we know that artists and practices have often taken on multiple roles and acting quite a number of times as quasi-institution themselves, and taking a hint from those and inspiration from those practices. This exhibition was in a way looking at some of those propositions and ideas and narratives, and of course there were thematics in it, labor being one of them. And the exhibition was quite simply laid out. It opened in the corporate building of KNM in Noida, with a project by layout for a collective of 3 artists, Boka, Pravat, and Sushant Mandal. And with this sort of a installation, it moved forward with Ajir and Kumar's documentation of laborers in Gurgaon, to a very important historical series by Ravi Agarwal, Down and Out, series done in 1997 to 2000, with work migrant laborers in Gujarat, and Rakhi Peswani, and then of course, you can see that picture image there, which greeted the visitor, of D.P. Roy Chaudhary's Triumph of Labor. That's like installed site-specific work, a kind of, it can be called a site-specific work, right at the entrance of National Gallery of Modern Art in New Delhi. So, and of course, with Down and Out, Sudhir Bhatwardhan's Nala, and Green Torso, very important historical works that were, of course, loaned from different collections. And on the right, you see Bhopal gas tragedy, a project with victims of Bhopal gas tragedy, and a memory project that was taken shape with the community. And this is and with projects like Shiba Chachi's Record Resist, that documented women histories movement in the 70s and 80s. And tools, Rimson's tools, again, a very, very important work. And I'm primarily showing these works with the intention of kind of sharing the kind of context the exhibition was setting up, Naim Mohammed's United Red Army. And a lot of these works were on loan at that time, and of course retroactively entered the museum collection, quite a few of them, Rimson's tools and Mohammed's United Red Army. And given this kind of cracking that these works were opening up within the archive, was this small section project that sat in the center of the museum called Grazing. And it was almost intentionally empty. As you can see, the center filled not with works, but presences of different kinds. A calm but airy space that acted as a trigger to think about practices that carry on an art scene, not in the form of a collection, rather as vectors and energies and directions and potentialities. So Grazing was mostly an invitation where the space of sensing, the museum as a space of sensing, sees itself. So what kind of relationality this young museum was kind of throwing itself into and making of the field itself, So I was interested at that point in kind of bringing in not just a single artist, but rather a whole scene, an art scene. What do we call an art scene? So an art scene of Bangalore, with many artists, collaborators, critics, curators, and facilitators, etc., were brought in, with their energies and kind of insufficiencies that kind of liven up a scene and what it means, with all the complicated questions and networks and conversations, tangibles and the intangibles and quasi things. So it hosted the documentation material of like 15, 20 years, 1995 onwards, of whatever was happening in Bangalore up till 2013. So that's like 20 years of dense intensity, and mediated via 3 Bangalore-based artists, Kiran Subaya, Prayas Abhinav, and Abhishek Hazra. And so just to kind of take you through it. Carolyn Christopher Buggive's 2015 lecture appearing suddenly, amongst all the other documentation and about Documenta and Documenta archives. So that Grazing was a way of navigating the field and building this continuous relay and loops inside zones of contact there, that exhibition. And then comes Hangar for the Passerby, which kind of literally gave this spatial imaginary to this incremental museum that I'm proposing, in order to hold the materials that the space of the museum wasn't really ready for, couldn't hold yet, and also producing alongside this witness figure of the passerby. And of course I have my own theory on it. Hangar was essentially an inquiry into how this collective body moves, but it unfolded like an assemblage of various intensities of collectivities and working together, collaborative artistic practices, formal and informal moments of coming together of artists and groups of artists in India from 1947 to 2017. So it was not a survey exhibition, but one that was making very clear choices. So the list of artists, which you cannot see very clearly, was not really a list of artists, but list of a lot of projects and moments and cooperatives and collectives. So those 40 plus projects become like 100 plus people, and you entered via this Talur's large work, concrete work, and which was like a negative cast of Santhal family. So just to facilitate a year-long, through an year-long process, the 3D rendering of that very fragile site-specific work, and the files exist, and kind of go through the permissions of kind of making that happen. And so just to let you know, the files exist, the work with the artist, of course, but this negative cast of Santhal family, and referring back also to Santhal family, the exhibition, which I think is a remarkable, iconic exhibition that Grant Watson did, and the kind of propositioning that was doing, or lineage mapping that it was doing, was quite radical. I believe in the history, and I'm sorry I've not given credit for this picture. So this kind of movement, and you entered Hanger via the college backyard, or backyards that a lot of us from the art colleges are very well aware of, and a project from this Kochi Students' Biennale. So via this kind of melting, an invocation of many histories and stories, you come onto an incline, a real incline that was really dividing the whole museum into, diagonally cutting across into two halves, and where when you go up, like you really feel precarious, and really feel the height and the fall. And as you pass through, you see these different moments or groups just roaming around. On your right is actually Umesh Madanhali's workshop that he did with the students of Kaaba in Mysore College of Visual Arts in Mysore, and it was a 3-day workshop, a very simple idea called Name and Form, with students taking the donkeys back to the village where the donkeys had come from, so from college to the village, and then they walk back. So yeah, just walking with the donkeys on the road and through as you walk through the incline, and then other kind of things that you see with Camp's rooftop, which is a marvelous architectural intervention that they've made in their space. So Camp was there, Ashok was there, and of course Camp's other work was there in the show, but the kind of work of these collectives and the way it was coming in was also a certain kind of choices were being made. So Rux was there, but Rux Sarai Reader 09 was there as a project, which happened at Devi Art Foundation, a phenomenal exhibition. So the kind of moments, such moments and gyrations were getting mediated. And then of course, the Shantiniketan's Monogobet Society, the full society celebrating the Vriksharopan Day and looking for trees, led by Sanchan Ghosh, the whole class, looking for the trees that have been planted for the last 80 plus years in that huge lush campus now, and going about doing their job, for three to four consecutive days. So this incline led to many more such hearings, including one room led to this project, by Amitesh and Arnika, where they were again employed by us as artists within by HCL, not KNMA, but HCL, the tech company that funds us. They were employed there for 6 months, and the five works they did, and almost like on the lines of artist placement group that worked in the UK. So I think I'll just quickly make a few points that I want to make. So, I mean, this is this is also one of the works that they did. Bhule Bistre Kalakar Samiti, a very important project, which we now know as Katputli Colony, displaced but coming together and mediated via Rajiv Sethi's very important book and proposition by him and Pupul Jaikar for the permanent society in this museum of the itinerant. So, I mean, I was lucky to get and be able to show the originals of the book. And this is when the beggar. Anyway, I don't think we have the time to go into details about it. But at the heart of the hangar sat this very important place at the same place where the grazing was, the souvenir shop, and that souvenir shop was at the center, and the souvenir shop was full of produce. Of collective, the craft produce of many moments that happened, unacknowledged moments in the mainstream art history of India in the 70s and 80s. So Group 1890, a very important group that lived only for a year, but wrote a manifesto. But also, many people do not know, wrote about. A proposal for an art center which was to be made on the lines of Bauhaus. They never made one, but Cholamandal in 1966 did make one and haven't been really looked at properly. So it included, I mean, for the first time, the materials on loan from the MSU University Baroda, the toys by generations of students, of course KG's toys as well, were brought in, were being shown for the first time. So it was kind of relaying from the Weaver Service Center, a lot of prints of Barve, the batiks made by Cholamandal artists, the silverware, the kind of, and the coup, of course, was the Ramanujam's solo exhibition, and which was the largest solo exhibition until that point, with 10 works of his. Being brought together for the first time in this way inside the souvenir shop. KG Subramaniam's works, again in the 50s, but done during his time at the Weaver Service Center. So I think I'll just quickly. Aruna Vasudev, Arnavaz Vasudev, and Prabhakar Barve's. So these are not just juxtapositions. These are constructions, specific constructions that the hangar was kind of trying to lay out. And so from that moment of the hangar till here, the young artist of our times, this project has a logo, and it was initiated in 2019, which has had its own gyrations, and as a multi-year project, and a polyphony of voices that it has managed to bring in, and with its shape-shifting things that it does through exhibitions, publications, and projects and libraries. Which is essentially, to thinking with, as a young museum in one of the densest parts of the world, it also implies to continuously think with the youngest population that resides in South Asia, and the project essentially explored range of artistries, thinking with the young as a sensory body, and with youthfulness as an energy, but not really binding it only to an age, but conceptually addressing it. So, an artist self-published book turned into an exhibition, an exhibition of smells, and two anthropologists' research diary opened in another form, and which propositions the idea of smell work, or work being divided into smell in terms of labor, in terms of smell, in terms of domestic workers, the Sakhi cab drivers, the kind of positions that the exhibition was looking at across the city of Delhi, and 3 particular markets: the spice market, the fish market, and workers. Defining these jobs in terms of smell work and smell workers. Those who work in spice markets often lose their olfactory sense, etc. So with the kind of symposiums and field study that we kind of enabled through this exhibition, and a year-long research that kind of preceded it, to say, this is the 3rd exhibition, Right to Laziness, that was looking at the apology as the form of apology and structure of an apology. It was in 2020, and of course the last one being the very small feelings, and now we have another one coming up. That happened in Dhaka, and of course, I think I'll just end here, saying that very small feelings, like it goes back to Anpu's Summer's Children, and to the sensory, and to the bringing participatory in a way which is not technology-led but story-led, and also where presence the participant's presence makes the museum, makes the interaction. So the very small feelings, for instance, was completely about childhood and children and the child in us, so speaking with the same content with across generations, and kind of building this intergenerational dialogue actively in the space in a very performative way. I think these exhibitions have been performing a certain role, and I hope it's been towards this idea of this incremental museum, which is slowly growing organism that kind of softly evolves. And now we have the 5th one coming, which is actually curated by Akithami, and Mohammed shared her work today. He's exhibited her earlier, Akithami and Bharat Murthy and Himanshu Shetty. So it's an exhibition that's that's actually a survey-like exhibition on comics and zines in India. So it's coming up in October. That's going to be the 5th one. So the process has been continuing. Yeah. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Akansha, also for reviving and animating the memories of these shows for those of us who had the pleasure of grazing through them. I want to take you back to your title, actually, and to Tememe, of course, uttering this profound group of words. And as you were presenting, and as I was thinking about the frameworks within which these exhibitions were born and manifested, to really think about a different kind of temporality in each of these shows, and the idea of rescuing speed within a very quickly growing institution. And perhaps we can talk a bit about that intervention in the kind of program of the institution that you have been a core part of for a long time now, since 2011, and what kind of that has meant at each stage in terms of these exhibitions, slowing down, creating certain possibilities for stopping and chewing and re-chewing, but then also the work of the institution as one that is involved in consolidating, in collection building, in cataloging, as we talked about earlier in the day. And so that is a play, and you mentioned some of the works that have been shown in these exhibitions have since entered the collection as well. But actually many of the histories, particularly in Hangar for the Passerby, that in 2017, histories of these very significant art centers, these collaborative enterprises, many state-supported, others artist-led, which have now entered both market and museum in a very kind of palpable way. And so, yeah, I guess what are the guardrails, the speed breakers, if you will, and how do we kind of roll with that metaphor a little bit about thinking of putting these kinds of moments of pause, of creating a spirit of metabolism and slow digestion in the face of encountering, as you said, undigestible or difficult to immediately contextualize materials.
It's museum, I mean, we know museum making, institution building, and thinking are long-term commitments and projects. And then, of course, I mean, the museum as people, or museum is people, which has already been established and is already a known fact, and we also believe in that. So for us, at the larger scale of things, of course, we are doubling, like, it's not even doubling, it's like 10 times, a growth of 10 times of an institution in a span of 3 years. So that kind of speed and growth that we are looking at is unprecedented for a 15-year-old institution. And so which comes with its own challenges and which also comes with its own excitements. And so here, of course, there has been a lot of room for rethinking and inventing the models that you're interested in, and also letting go of things that you're not interested in. So these have been parallel processes. So what I'm presenting is one aspect of the museum. But I mean, the kind of other histories and retrospectives and scale of things or mobilization of works or collections, private collections, or works sitting in individuals' houses, but dusting very important historical works, getting the conservation done. So those doing the ground research, etc., and facilitating that. So it, of course, is a long process and has involved many people and many teams on the ground. And so for us, it is speeding up, but it is also internally a slow process. So I mean, I haven't done many exhibitions like as such, like in terms of production, my own shows. So a lot of time is also spent back end doing a lot of groundwork. And so I think the way institutionally we are mapping it is you have projects, you have your exhibitions, and you have you lay out your exhibition program, like thinking in advance, 2 to 3 years, what fits where, etc., and then moving the and one very important point that is very true of KNMA is the collection building and exhibition making have been very entwined processes. So we were 400 works in 2011 in the collection. We just had 400 works, and now we have 18,000 works. And so just that scale of acquisition, and now there's a different department of acquisition. So the departmentalization has happened, which hadn't happened in the first early years. So that scale of things has, of course, changed. But the how entwined it has been with the production that we have been actually putting out for public is what actually matters the most. And I think the curatorial team's investment in that staging and with that materials and with those facilitations that we've made, I think has been like, it's been day in, day out, like it has been tremendous, like, so it's for us, I think, yeah. But going back to your question about the title, I think I can add another title to it. I mean, because I still can't get one adage that I had heard, I'd read actually while working on Very Small Feelings, shared with Diana, and we were both been wrapping our heads around it. We don't know the source. It says nothing is older than a child, and I mean, which way round do you hold it and think with it? So
I love that. I mean, I'm also thinking about the word thought forms, which is a word that you have used to describe some of these projects, and maybe you want to say a bit more about the exhibition as a thought form, particularly in relationship to some of these shows, and perhaps at the end you have to rush a bit through the Young Artists of Our Time series, but I think that specifically invokes these possibilities of thought forms. So maybe you want to use a couple of minutes to talk us through that.
So exhibitions are not, at least for me, exhibitions have never been the end or have never been the beginning, as, I mean, I'm sure it's clearer. So they come from a very long process, and they are staged, and they become portals to something else. And the reason why I'm still presenting, I mean, many of you from Delhi or other places may be already familiar with a lot of the material that I've presented, but I'm still stuck with them. I'm like a nutter. Still go back to this because it's still unprocessed, and at least personally for me. So to say, I mean, so that's why they're active thought forms for me, and as well as for a lot of researchers, artists who have actually used these materials. So they have been animated, not just in my research, but in writings of lots of other minds, and you know, there have been activations, you know, there have been grounds of activations, and I think that's kind of what I'm interested in. So when I use thought form, these are provocations for me as well as for others, and they're almost always at spaces that are just, you know, with so much potential and waiting for something to happen. And I think the happening doesn't happen right there and immediately. The anticipation is always there, and but it gets performed at another point and moment, but you have to watch out. You have to look out for it. So I always make the audience work, so I never take my audience for granted, and they have to work with me equally on the ground. Yes. Oh yeah. Yes, that's her.
And maybe a last quick question, and then I will just open it up also, because I know there's going to be lots of questions in the room, but I'm also interested to hear about this idea of being part of a kind of core instituting team in 2011, and in a way of being continuously part of that team, but at this moment, as you spoke about scale, but to think about ways in which this proposition of the incremental museum has created perhaps some thoughts and ideas for you about what that model means, not just for KNMA, and I think we should, you know, your thinking is much broader than that as well, but for all of us, for institutions, for curatorial work at large, and particularly this kind of, the kind of visceral bodily metaphors, the idea of consuming, of shedding, of rechewing, where does one see those manifest for you in the next sort of phase of your work, as not just a curator at an institution, but as a thinker of curatorial practice?
I think definitely in the form of publications, which is what has been a major lack that I definitely see. But you know, publication as a form has to come to it. So I mean, so we've been under YOT, we've been publishing artist books, commissioning new work, but it's so hard. I don't know how Sharmini created what she's created with raking leaves. It's magic, but the kind of commitment that requires is it's intense work. It's amazing, Dorrit. But you know, the incremental, this proposition of incremental museum is also a revisionary. Is also to say that it is a museum which is a proposition that can also be revisionary, and it's not aligned only to a particular ending, time, form. It's open. It's an open accumulation, it's an open, but as long as the institution is committing to look again and again. You know, and hoping for a dialogue and hoping for a kind of a openness, which is or a porosity, you know, that allows production of different kinds to happen. That allows voices, like for instance, artists. I mean, one of the recent projects under it has been a gathering of more than a gathering, a kind of a building of community of artist mothers who've been caring for children in different groups, and it's been led by an artist, Ruchika Vasant Singh, who she has already been doing project like this outside of the museum, but now bringing it in the fold widens its scope to a very, very, very large umbrella of artists, and we kind of working now with different groups via her and with her. And not sure what it may lead to, but but these are also projects that have different futures. One is imagining. I'm imagining, like for the new museum as well. So the kind of spaces we are building, affordances we're thinking with for ourselves as well as for artists and communities we're working with. Yeah, I mean, of course, the plans are much wider, much larger. The inaugural year thinking is in place and in action. So, of course.
Is there something you can tell us about that?
No, I dare not.
The twinkle in your eye was palpable. I want to open it up to the room and take some questions, maybe starting with someone in the back, because we haven't gone there very much. Are there any hands on that side? No hands there. Then we're looking around. Let's start with Santosh there, and then we'll come to you.
I'm Santosh. Thank you, Akansha, for this vast grazing. I had a privilege of seeing your 2017 that hangar, and it was fantastic as an experience. Walking through, and it was like walking through history from 60s and onwards, and it's a history of collectives largely, right? And that was something that was not really told until then. Now, I want to hear from you about these two different exhibitions, the hangar and the one that you did later with more younger artists. So the hangar exhibition, you already have a narrative, right? It's a linear narrative. You have groups of artists collectives, and then, but the very nature of exhibition is unconventional compared to the history of exhibitions. That's something that's interesting for me. Now, when we look at these young artists, the nature of exhibition is not very different from that. Now, I want to know the way you would engage with those works, right? In terms of, because the character, the quality, and the conceptual configuration of these works are very different, right? And for me, there is a critique, and I have a critique based on my own experience as a teacher for past 15 years. And the problem lies for me in the art school, right? The conceptual lack of the contemporary young artists is because of the pedagogical fallacy that has not been resolved, and I doubt if it will. So I want to know your experience as a curator, how you dealt with these two cases. One, you have a linear archive. Another, there's no archive that perhaps you are struggling to put together. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. So hangar wasn't linear, and you know it already. Like, wasn't linear, or wasn't about one history or meta history, or and was also taking a lot of, it was irreverent. The irreverence was all across, right? So and it was taking its risks and chances and speaking a language. It was building its own vocabulary and torques and speaking a certain language. And with that language, I mean, Souvenir Shop, it was just one section, and there were many other projects that were around, and of course it was a huge, huge show. So talking about that, I mean, wasn't of course possible. But just within the Souvenir Shop, I mean, one took the liberty of saying that that entire produce is actually Group 1890's Art Center's produce. I mean, labeled it as such. So one was making these cuts, sharp cuts, and but no, yeah. I mean, of course there were questions, but attention doesn't exist, right? You know, there have hardly, even today, there's hardly been any dialogue on this, on these gesturing, on these risks, on these comments, you know, and I mean, you know, the Chola Mandal and Group 1890 and Astitva Group, and like there's so much going on in there. But that's just one play. And in that spirit, you know, in that garage. So what young artist of our times is doing something else altogether, and it's not to do with it's not a platform or a project series that only looks at younger artists. The young is just a label, is more of a terminology to group different kind of makers and makings, because through this, you know, anthropologists, ither makers, zinesters, bookmakers of different kind, like, so one is able to build a completely different arcs and bring a lot into the fold. So it's just it's a nomenclature, and I'm interested. I've always been interested, as you know, in nomenclatures and figuring them out, and that's also what I propose for Incremental Museum as well. You know, that ability and agility to play with nomenclatures and to come up with these terminologies, and that's why the archive and the archived object is not a static object, or is not a static thing that just sits there. You know, so I think that sort of a potentiality leaks out, and that's why these are not juxtaposition; these are constructions, and these are curatorial insertions and provocations. And if they're caught, then they do produce fires. If they aren't, it's okay too.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions?
Hi, Akansha, Shivansh. I feel like there is, in my experience, there is a... Sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes. So this is more alongside exhibition making and curation with respect to KNMA, since you've been a part of the organization for so long. And in my experience, I've seen a very different focus in terms of the physical actualization of the exhibitions, where there is focus on a publication of some sorts, a written material with the exhibition that goes in and the text that goes in. It's very different to how other organizations might do it, and I've always been curious about the guiding principles about exhibition making when it comes to an organization as big as KNM at this point, which also is a museum. Could you tell me a little more about what are these guidelines, what was the journey to get here, and a little bit more, because this is very curious. Like,
yeah, thank you for that question. Of course, didactics, museum didactics are always a question, a big question for all curators. And for us, of course, making it bilingual and making the information succinct, and all of that is very important, and of course preliminary information to be out at a certain point in time. So these are also capacities I mean, I wouldn't say that we succeed always and all the time and in advance, but that's always the effort to have it. I mean, these are the basic things that you have to do. But now, I mean, what I can say now, what we are working towards is actually a guideline book. So now it's only now, like, I mean, it's for the longest that the team has been very small, And only recently we have hired more curators, and the team is expanding, like not just the curatorial team, but the whole museum. I mean, we need people, we need everybody. Literally do. So now comes an important problem, which is of standardizing and thinking through the texts. So far, with a few curators, it was okay, or maybe not okay, but it was still okay to have text written in a certain curator's style. But now it's important to, with several languages and several styles, now it's important for us to start standardizing things and start making frameworks, and that's what we are working on towards, a kind of a handbook for the team. Right. And but these are also part of capacity building. So these kind of processes are beginning to happen now. Right. But yeah, haven't been a.
And just like a small follow-up, considering that their guidelines are still being formed, how is the discourse happening within the team about how it should be? And because like if there is not a strict guideline,
it varies. It varies according to curators. It varies according to, like for instance, for the hanger, one of the biggest critique that came was that the didactics were minimal, and intentionally, and I take the blame for it, and because it was also intentional, it was also towards something. So there were didactics, but limited. Like souvenir shop didn't have a didactic. Things were mixed up and on the floor, etc. So that was intention, so it was in a certain spirit. So it's according. So it's but now with the coming of this handbook, I will be pushed to label things even in the souvenir shop. But then my way of labeling could be a booklet that's kept at the souvenir shop. So souvenir shop retains its. So maybe labels come. maybe the tags come. The tags that are actually in the souvenir shops, the Sona shops. So basically, the model was the Sona shops, the handloom board Sona shops. That used to happen. That used to be there, in expos. I don't know. I mean, I'm being nerdy. Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thank you.
Another question in the back.
Hi, I'm Nimaya from MMCA Sri Lanka, and thank you for a really interesting talk. I'd love to probe more about the incremental museum as a model, or if you see it as a model, and also if there is a kind of idealized endpoint to this, or to this thinking of incrementality, don't know if that's a word, or if it's more of a state of being for a museum to continuously be kind of working towards something. And also maybe how you think of that framework of thinking about what it means to be an institution that's incremental, and how that kind of thinking frames your work. Those are my, I guess, two questions.
Thank you. That's a fantastic question. So incrementality is of course a quality that that part of this imaginary of this institution that one is trying to think with. I can't say I have answers to your question exactly, but it's a framework that I'm building through in practice. Actually, because and it's informed. It took me these many years and several particular directionality to come to this language, I've very recently arrived at this formulation, and it's informed by the work. So for instance, the image that you're seeing right now is a work by Anga Art Collective, and it's a collective based in Assam, and what they did in Dhaka was completely different than what they did here, and their proposition was actually to think with the school that they, which is called No School, but it's KNOW School, and the play with language, and they've been working with mission community that doesn't have a language and thinking about letterbooks in that language. So I'm just giving this example to say that for an incremental museum to recognize these possibilities and potentialities within project, so a partnership between a No School and an incremental museum are possible, and relays are possible outside. So an incremental museum is a model that kind of spreads outwards, and so of course, and in an interesting dialogue with the collection. So for us, the collection is the key, and it's not until 2023, 24 that I've started working more with the collection, and a lot of my past work has been outside the collection. So whatever I've shared today has been all outside the collection, and interestingly, most of this material has, in its own way, entered the collection, like not mediated, but museum was the first one to actually present it also. So I think that's interesting for me.
Yeah. Any last questions from this side of the room before we wind up for the day? Mira, is there a mic? Let me get that back. Did we grab the microphone back? Thank you. There we go. I feel like I'm going to fall into this pit at some point.
Akansha, I'm going to make this very short because I know there's a group discussion. You just said that you had your own theory of what a passerby is. I wanted to just hear something about that.
Okay. We have the passerby, anger for the passerby. Like I don't know. In different occasions, I've had the luxury of talking about it elaborately. So passerby is not a flaneur. It's a different position, and it's passerby is actually in relationship to history, and passerby in relation to responsibility as well, and in relation to history and the event and the moment. I really like that the passerby has the potential to be a witness, but also has a choice to not be one and just graze through. So that sort of an activation in terms of the kind of collectivities and moments that Hanger was stringing through were also moments like Umesh Madan Ali's workshop, absurd, completely absurd. Like just one example, but it was full of such materials. They mean nothing, or they do mean a lot. So they're not documentation, they're not exactly byproducts of a thing, so they're not a work of art yet, or in the process of becoming something. So that sort of a zone of classification, so Hanger became that space to record those moments that cannot be valued as per the vocabularies for now, or for that point, until 2017, and it was the first exhibition actually. It was before, of course, Dhaka, before Documenta, before the Centre Pompidou exhibition on the collectives. So.
Thank you. Do we have time for a last question? No, right. Okay.
My name is Manush.
Just wait for the microphone, please.
I'm Manush Acharya. I'm a curator and practicing artist in interdisciplinary way. I'm just wondering how you connect with the new generation's artists. It's through your networking or your research, or they apply to your institution. How do you connect all these art practitioners. Like I have seen, because there is a lots of historical journey in your exhibitions, where I have seen that Kiran Subbaya's work also curated by you, where I was always fascinated by his works. By I have seen his work in. So how do you connect, or what's the process or strategy, or the that I want to know or learn from you?
Yeah, it is definitely, at least in my case, it's research based, and of course one does one's research, and which of course includes speaking with artists, doing studio visits, activating your own networks, being agile and being thinking. I think it's a mutual process. It's a dialogue with the field, with what you think is the field, and the field that you make and grow, with you. So I think, so it's a dialogic process, and in most cases, it's me reaching to the material and finding ways than the artist coming and and digging out, doing the digging work and prodding and prodding. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Akansha.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Big round of applause. And with that, we're going to close today's program. And do you have something to say? Well, I'm gonna, I think, introduce us tomorrow with some thoughts and threads from today. We're all still grazing, processing, thinking about the many, many ideas that have been shared. And really a huge thank you to all of the presenters who've laid out an incredible range of thought forms and ideas for us to take with us this evening. We will see you back at 10:30 tomorrow morning, 9:30 if you'd like to have a seat, as we learned today. And yes, have a lovely, restful evening, and look forward to thinking with you tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you.